So in this video, I'm going to be going over how to launch your high ticket info product into paid traffic. So this video is going to cover, or this is going to be a video series. It's going to cover prep, initial testing, and optimizing your campaigns, again, for high ticket info products. Now, I wanted to note that everything being said in this video is from my experience, spending over $600K in 2025 on Facebook ads specifically. I have some YouTube ad experience, I have some Google search ad experience, but I'm speaking specifically to Facebook ads. Now, the other thing to note is that nothing I say in this video is a statement of fact, just a statement of experience. So just to show you guys a little bit of proof, here's a screenshot from one client account. Again, it's only 1/6 of the ad spend I mentioned, but unfortunately, a lot of our larger accounts are under NDA, so I can only share what I can share without crossing that line. Now, like I said, what I'm going to get into in this video specifically is going to be phase one, but what's really important to note right away is the strategy you take when launching into paid traffic can make or break the initial performance of your campaigns. If you fuck this up, you can sit in this perpetual cycle of failing and failing and failing for months instead of really easily being able to figure out what works. And so we break this down into 3 phases. One is your prep phase. So this is getting an understanding of your ICP, funnel, ad strategies, etc. Then initial testing. So how do I test messaging, targeting, funnel bottlenecks, sales calls, all that fun stuff. And then after that, it's going to be optimizing. So taking it from we're profitable to scaling this thing up. Now, in this video, I'm just going to be focusing on the prep component of launching into paid traffic. And this is going to be a 3-step video series, again, covering prep, initial testing, and optimizing. Now, if you launch this in any other order or you rush this process, there's a very high likelihood you will fail. I'm speaking from experience, especially when you run an ads first agency. You churn clients like a motherfucker because people are either scared to fail, or in the beginning, when I first started this agency a little over a year ago, it's the you don't know what you're doing. And so a lot of this is speaking from my own mistakes. Now, the big thing I will tell you is if you choose to work with an agency or you hire on a marketer and they tell you they can launch in 2 weeks, be very, very weary of this. There's a very high chance that they're doing a slapdick job and not looking at the full picture and mapping out a solid plan of action. So by using the following format to audit your process, as well as potential marketers and agencies, you'll be in a much better position to, again, hire someone, take it in-house, or bring on an agency to scale your offer into paid traffic. So right away, like I said, we're going to start with the prep phase. And with anything in prep, this is to make sure that you meet basic launch criteria and build the correct assets for your situation. So the first thing is, what are you going to need in order to launch paid ads to high ticket specifically? One, we only start with clients if they have a 15K to 30K test budget, and that's even low. What I'll get into a little bit later is financially modeling, but let's say you sell a 5K thing and I have a 15K test budget, or I only want to spend $3,000 in a month. Assuming break even on the front end, I may not even make a sale in 30 days, right? So you need at least a 15 to 30K test budget. I push all of my clients to launch at $1,000 a day. Next, you need about 2 or 3 months of runway. This, if anything, is more for headspace. If you've never run paid ads before, you're going to tweak. You're going to panic. You're going to get very skittish when it comes to spending money, especially if you run negative or break even to start. So by having runway, you can at least say, okay, I'm willing to put this money away. I think one of the guys I follow online, Jeremy Haynes, he explains it very well. Advertising is a form of gambling, and you never walk into a casino without having money you're willing to lose. So be willing to lose this money. It allows you to take the bets that you need to make without panicking and changing stuff too quick. The next thing you need to have if you're launching to paid is a strong back-end infrastructure. I've been on way too many offers, especially in the beginning. This is a huge mistake of mine. Is you go to launch ads into these businesses that have no back-end, and it becomes extremely messy and you have no idea what's going on. So having a solid back-end for tracking, but also sales team operations is going to be huge. Someone I recommend watching for the sales ops is going to be Josh Troy. Fucking fantastic when it comes to the ops side, which leads me into my next point. On the base needs side of things, you need a good sales team. One of the campaigns, one of our bigger accounts that we got really, really lucky on, the offer owner is a absurd closer, and we've hired really good closers into the business. And so the back end infrastructure wasn't really there from 0 to 1. Now this offer's doing around 100K per month on cold traffic, and it's basically been just a nutty sales team and a slapdick infrastructure. So that's something I personally have to go back in and restructure, which is why it goes one or the other, but ideally you have the infrastructure and the sales team comes second. Now, initial desired needs, which makes this a lot easier for you, is one, if you have an organic audience, that is great. It makes my life so much easier as an advertiser. I'll get into the caveats to that as we move through this. Next is going to be having an existing offer. If you already have an offer in place that converts, that is fucking money. And if you have sales calls, it makes the advertiser's job so easy because all we're doing is we're leveraging those sales calls to create our marketing copy and scale into the paid ads on the traffic, the content, the funnel, the VSL, the emails, everything, and even framing future sales calls going forward. So those are going to be your basic needs. Now, step one on prep is you're going to want to outline your initial copy doc and assess your audience. This is something that we will take a week doing. Personally, I like to be very hands-on with this part specifically because we do work almost as a business partner with a lot of these offers. It's not something I take lightly, and this is the biggest lever on the entire ad creation process. If you rush this, there's a very high chance you will fuck up the launching process and running ads from day one. So the first thing that you need to do is create a core messaging doc to maintain congruency throughout the marketing material. Where a lot of people go wrong is they launch a funnel and then they launch these ads and you go from ad to funnel and it doesn't make sense and you see a huge drop off just from that one piece. That is like the biggest lever you can pull immediately, is just having congruency. The way that you do this is you create a core messaging or a core copy doc to reference throughout the entire thing. This is going to be used to address your ideal consumer profile, broken up into the root psychological drivers, your unique selling mechanism, your limiting beliefs that the consumer may have, objections they may have, reframes you can use throughout marketing material and sales calls, proof, so you're stacking all your testimonials in this, and then there's going to be a couple of other things that we also include in this document to make sure that we have all our T's crossed and our I's dotted on the messaging side of things. After that, then we go into collecting, or how do we go about collecting this information? It's going to be existing sales calls. This is going to be the biggest lever because we actually know what happens. What you'll notice at scale when you're spending a couple $1,000s a day, which isn't even scale really, but when you get into that $2,000, $3,000 a day mark, you'll start to see when you launch an ad, you may see certain objections start to come up on the back end, right? And so we're using the sales calls as a soundboard to see what kind of reaction people are having from the advertisements and from the funnel. So sales calls is going to be number one. If we don't have sales calls, then we're going to want to set up interviews with all of our existing customers. If you're launching from organic or you don't have an offer, this is going to be interviews with your followers to figure out, why do they follow me? What information do they want? What can I offer them? All that good stuff. If you don't have either of those and you're just ballsy as fuck and you want to go straight to cold traffic, it's going to be doing market research on your direct competitors, adjacent competitors, and then a pro tip is sometimes launching a campaign just to test messaging, but I won't get into that too much on this video. Now, like I said, nailing this from day one is vital to your campaign success. The money is made in the prep work, so the more extensive this document is, the better. Now, we keep a lot of this information proprietary, internal to us, because again, like I said, this is the biggest lever in launching ads. So if you want to learn more, book a call. If not, let's go to step 2, which is going to be determining your funnel. Now, determining your conversion mechanism, this is going to be a big lever in general, and it also dictates your ad. It dictates the way that you run your ads. So in the high ticket space, I recommend one of 3 funnel types: a VSL call funnel, a webinar, or a low to high ticket ascension funnel. Recently, what we're seeing perform best is a low to high ticket and webinar. However, call funnels, they never go out of style, and they are all reliable. The old jellyfish net that SpongeBob used to open up. That's what I look at the call funnels as. And so there's pros and cons to each one. So I'm going to go into each funnel and then go into the next most important part, which is going to be financially modeling these. So with each type, the first one that I say, again, I recommend if anyone's going to get started with, I would start with a call funnel. It's easy to launch. It doesn't require a ton of skill on the front end or from the front end brand face. You can create consistent lead flow in the business, so it's easier to ramp reps up. It's not as hectic. It's easy to diagnose bottlenecks, and there's a much shorter burn rate. Now, burn rate is essentially how much money I expect to burn on the front end in order to collect data to test high ticket on the back end. So by understanding my burn rate, or by having a shorter burn rate, I'm able to become profitable a lot faster. Now, the cons to a call funnel is you need a good sales team, and it's a lot harder to beta test internally. When I say beta test internally, I'm taking this straight from a recent podcast I saw with Jason Fladlin, where he mentioned testing things internally. So let's say he's running a webinar and he has a community or a following already. He's just going to launch to organic. You can launch a call funnel to your organic audience, but realistically, it's going to be a little more difficult compared to, let's say, a webinar. Next is going to be your webinar funnels. Pros to a webinar funnel are they create extremely warm prospects. You can pull forward large lump sums of cash. So if you're not experienced, I don't recommend launching it. However, this is what we like to do with our clients because, again, we can pull cash forward, take everything off of your hands, and then just use that cash to fund scale and more tests instead of running a call funnel and just like scaling more systematically than getting a big front end ROAS, if that makes sense. Next, you do have the opportunity to run a webinar funnel without a sales team, so you can achieve scale. This is something Dan Henry does all the time. It's easier to beta test internally because you can tailor the presentation and the offer as you go through it. So you can literally use the audience to soundboard your pitch, collect cash, and then tailor off of that. And then it's very, very possible to liquidate your ad spend on the front end. This is through self-liquidating offers, VIP tickets, and then other things that you can do, free trials to MRR products that you can do to, again, liquidate your front end ad spend, which is harder to do on the call funnel. Cons to this is your brand face. It has to be good on camera. If your brand face or your founder or you hate being on camera, hire someone or don't run this funnel because your energy with a webinar is crucial. So that's going to be the number one thing. You do have a much longer burn rate with these. If you know what you're doing, you can turn profitable relatively quick. If you don't, and you're running weekly webinars, don't be surprised if it takes you 2 to 3 months to turn profitable on a weekly webinar if you're spending $5K a webby, right? So that's another thing. Just be very, very wary of. It's going to be harder to diagnose a bottleneck because, again, you're ironing out kinks on an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour long presentation. And so, again, you don't know, unless you work with someone that knows what they're doing, for example, an agency or a marketer with a lot of experience. If this is your first funnel you're running, it's going to be a lot harder for you to look up the funnel, look down the funnel, and understand where things went south. Was it the pitch? Was it the upfront framing? Was it the anchors? Was it the concepts you hit on in the process? Was it the ads? Was it the pre-Webby emails, post-Webby emails, show-up sequences, the framing? Was it the software? There's a ton of things that you need to be able to diagnose there's a lot of things you need to understand in order to be able to diagnose the bottleneck. And so this is just one of those things where I'm hesitant if you're not experienced in running webinars. And then the other thing is it is a very hefty workload depending on frequency. So I always push offer owners to immediately do weekly webinars to paid traffic. It's just a lot. And if you've never done webinars before as the presenter, even that alone, if you have someone doing the entire back-end ops, it's pretty draining. It'll probably fry you for the rest of the day. So just understand that webinars are a high workload for a high reward on the back end. One of my favorite conversion mechanisms, just a lot harder to crack initially. Now, next is going to be low to high ticket ascension. This is one I don't really like, nor do I have a ton of experience in, but I know it crushes. And we do a MRR model, but it's not what I run. And a great example of this is going to be Jeremy Miner and 7 Levels Black Book of questions. They do a 27 front end to a 15-minute setter implementation call to then book you on a closing call and then close you. Really, really good model. Just again, similar to the webinar, there's a lot of moving parts. However, pros to this, super easy to liquidate front end ad spend. So I can scale this thing into oblivion. The bottleneck becomes sales team, not necessarily spend, or nervousness of spend. You get a much higher volume of leads, and it also gives the buyer a taste of what you offer. So I noticed on B2B stuff, just from speaking to colleagues and friends of mine, low to high ticket ascension works a lot better because a B2B buyer is able to get a taste as to what you do. For example, this document that you'll see at the end of the 3 days very well could be flipped into a low ticket product on the front end, right? And you're able to see, okay, he understands how to prep, how to prep for launch, how to optimize the launch, and how to scale the launch, right? Or what was the 3 I outlined? Prep, initial testing, and optimizing. How that process goes, typically speaking, right? And so this will break down all of that. So again, it gives the buyer a taste of what you have to offer. Cons, it is harder to crack on the front end, in my opinion. You have these very copy-heavy sales pages. You're testing a ton of different messaging. Then you need to get the sales process right. It's a setter-heavy thing, so you need the whole team dialed in. So like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and this is why it's harder to crack. And then, as I briefly mentioned, you need a really dialed in setting team to make this work. If you have a shit setting team, not saying it won't work, but you will, your ROAS and your LTV on the back end of these things is going to suck dick if you have a bad setting team. So just be aware of that. Now, the other thing to note is, yes, these are pros and cons, but before you do anything, financially model your funnels. I first heard this from Jeremy Haynes, and then I was further exposed to this concept through Josh Troy from Wires for Strangers. This dude just started posting on YouTube. I don't know how consistently because he's only got 2 videos up, but my God, is this guy savage. So an example of a financial model is this. I ripped straight from Josh Troy. I don't take credit for any of this, but this is a great way to model out, okay, what are the key metrics for my funnel? Ad spend, CPM, total impressions, click-through rate, unique clicks, cost per click, opt-in, opt-ins, opt-in rate, opt-in, CPL, application rate. The list goes on all the way down to cash. I changed it a little bit from the one I saw, but I'm sure he has this too. Cash collected, ROAS on cash, revenue, ROAS on revenue, average sale price, number of payments. What are the setting team KPIs? How can they boost metrics? What is capacity planning? So one thing he mentioned when you go to achieve real scale is ROAS is going to dip as you're getting reps up to speed. So what does that look like? So again, financially modeling out the funnel, and then minimum, baseline, and overperforming. The other thing to note on the modeling side, not only should you model the funnel, but you should model your rep statistics. So ad spend, book calls, cost per call. But what I find very important that no one talks about, I initially saw this on a thing with Matt Ryder, and I've just taken it with me, is what is your ROAS per rep? What is your ROAS per live call? What is your cash collected, your revenue, right? That way you know what reps do I need to give the most, the best leads to, right? Who's collecting the most cash? I don't care about your close rate. Your close rate does not matter. Who collects the most cash? So this is just an example of financial models so that you understand what I'm talking about. But again, more on the ad side specifically and the marketing, less on sales. If you model this out, you know, okay, what is my base CPM? What is my base click-through rate, base show rate, close rate, all these fun stuff, so that again, I can model out what I need in order to perform. On the marketing end, again, you can get even more granular with this, right? What is my submitted application rate, my qualified application rate, my close rate, my VSL engagement rate, my play rate? If I'm getting really in depth, which it doesn't make too much sense in the direct response high ticket space, but let's say, speaking from like an e-com perspective, understanding like how deep in the page they go, where they stop, where they spend time, using heat maps. So there's a bunch of different stuff that you can use. Just know financially modeling your funnels allows you to make a lot more accurate decisions in the process. So once you've modeled your funnel and you've decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go with a call funnel, the next thing you're going to want to do is determine your ad strategy. This is largely based on your chosen funnel type. Now, please note that what you're going to see and what you've probably noticed is a lot of this is pulling on the guys that do it at scale. Now, I implement these strategies into my agency, and I use these effectively, consistently, and I put these into practice. I do not claim to be the founder of these principles, of these ad strategies. This is a combination of a bunch of different people like Jeremy Haynes, Ben Heath, Alex Becker, Dan Henry, etc. I could go on for hours and hours, but if you do see similarities, just know this is where they come from. I've just renamed some of these things to not directly rip from these guys, and keep it internal to our business. Now, one thing to note, in order to determine the ad strategy that you use to promote your funnel, you need to understand a couple of things. One, if you have an organic audience. Two, what the quality of that organic audience is. And three, your budget. If you have an organic audience, I recommend everybody just start with straight retargeting direct response. You can go live with that. You don't need all this fancy content marketing. However, if your audience was built off of clippers, you may see an influx of dog shit leads, and it'll be better if you just launched a cold. The reason that I say this, and I've seen this so many times, is you will have accounts that blew up off of memes, and the audience is just cooked. There was a creator I worked with that had around 300 and something K on Instagram, and we ran a webinar to this account. We had a couple hundred registrants. I want to say we got like 500 people on the webinar, and we had 3K in conversions. Now, I didn't write the webinar. Wasn't even actually on the webinar. I was just media buying on this offer. But 3K conversions on a webinar is fucking ridiculous. And this is because they blew up off of a meme and they had a very, very shit audience. So I go to say that because what I've also seen is on an account I'm on, the guy has 18K followers. I ran a retargeting campaign for a webinar we were running. The retargeting costs were higher than the cold traffic costs. That tells me his audience is kind of cooked. So be aware of that. Test the retargeting, but if you don't, then you're going to pivot into some of these content remarketing stuff. Now, as you go through this and as you create stuff, this is where, again, your content doc and your ICP doc becomes so important. What you're going to do is you're going to go back to that copy doc, reassess your audience and your ICP, and this now allows you to create your supporting messaging for your ad copy on the direct response, your gated content, and your content remarketing, which I'll cover in a second. Now, the end goal with all campaigns at scale, not at launch, but at scale, is to replicate the organic process. This is why having a solid organic presence can make your launch phase a lot smoother. So, based on that, there are three options that you can go with based on your organic audience makeup. Like I said, the number one thing to do is going to be your retargeting direct response. This is going to be just straight up retargeting your organic audience saying, I know you've seen me promoting this thing. You should book a call. Because of this, I'm going to hard sell the fuck out of you. That is the point of a retargeting direct response ad. Typically, if you have a strong organic presence, you can just do it. I see this is what they're doing with Brez, and Pierre is the operator there. This is what I see them doing. I haven't booked a call because I don't want to fuck their metrics. I'm assuming they're doing some content remarketing on the back end, but it's a very simple, still direct response image ad that's getting people to book calls, right? They're not doing any cold traffic, and it doesn't look like they're doing any heavy content remarketing, even on the retargeting side. So just know it works if you have a very strong organic presence. So I ran out of disk space somewhere. I'm going to pick up at three options to go with. So you have three options to go with based on your audience makeup. One is going to be your retargeting direct response. This, the reason you can get away with this is because you have such a strong organic presence. You can launch a pretty slapdick ad and crush because your audience is just waiting to buy. They need the direct call to action, and they need it to be put in front of their face a ton of times. And so this is why the retargeting direct response works so well. Is the goal is to recreate the organic process through content remarketing or just in general. And so if you have a strong organic presence, direct response is going to work right out of the gate. Now, the second phase is if you are targeting to the highest interest people. So again, in the launch phase, direct response to content remarketing works very, very well. This is going to be a front end, buy my thing. And on the back end, they're going to get hit with content. When they book a call, they're going to get hit with content to help with the framing. But again, because this individual already has a problem that's very front of mind, you can get away with the direct response. And so it allows you to push people through, get people to book, close deals, and launch a lot faster because you don't need to create this content gate on the front end. Now, the third method, and this is when I go up market, so I'm doing the most top of funnel people, is having a content gate to a direct response to a content remarketing. A content gate is essentially you will not see an ad asking you to buy my thing until you've watched X videos in X order to make sure that you are framed properly and have enough interest to say, hey, I've watched a half hour of this dude. I want to click this ad and then get retargeted, right? So again, we're just recreating the organic process based on interest levels in the market. Now I could make a whole nother video on bottom of funnel, middle funnel, and top of funnel. But essentially, when you launch ads, you want to start with bottom of funnel because it allows you to pull cash forward. These are people that need your thing, know their problems, and are aware of what they need solving. Then you go middle of funnel. They're aware of solutions. They're aware that they may have a problem, but you need to address the symptoms. And then there's top of funnel, which is they have no fucking clue what's going on. You typically see a lot of top of funnel stuff with like, check out this new drop shipping opportunity I found the other week, right? You're going to go into that stuff. So these are the three different types. In terms of the flow, this is typically how I work. Organic to hybrid retarg, gated content to hybrid retarg. This goes to the funnel. I like to run content remarketing between the direct response and the funnel. And then I like to run a different set of content remarketing between the funnel and the booked call time. So again, this is just a way to recreate the ads. This is just another breakdown of what I mean when I say direct response, content remarketing, and gated content. Direct response are ads designed to get the prospect to take a desired action. Content remarketing are ads disguised as content to pre-frame the prospect prior to sales calls. And then gated content are ads disguised as content to program the prospect before seeing the direct response ad. Or this is supposed to say pre-frame. The general rule of thumb is the colder the traffic and the more upmarket you go, the more content ad strategies you should use to frame the prospect and to get them to buy. Now, last thing I'll cover in phase one, which is the prep work and prepping the launch, is going to be creating the assets. Now, obviously, everything I just mentioned in the video above, there's a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of decisions that need to be made. So I wanted to walk you through how we typically go or how we operate as an agency as soon as someone fills out the onboarding form. So as soon as they fill out the form, the first thing we do is we start writing all of the long form copy. The reason we start with the long form copy is this allows us to build into the other things. If I start with a VSL, if I start with a webinar, if I start with the sales page on the low ticket, what I'm able to do is I'm now able to use this as the core piece to then reference in the short form copy. So again, I'm spending all my time in the long form, really nailing that, really dialing in the first iteration, then going to the short form copy. I start with the direct response ads and then I branch out into the content that I need after the fact. Once I do that, all of this gets pushed to the brand phase to then film the assets. Once the assets are filmed, I then push this to the editor, and the editor now becomes the only bottleneck in the launch process outside of the back end. As soon as the assets get pushed to the editor, or as soon as the assets begin getting filmed, then what I'm doing is I'm building the funnel and I'm connecting the back end. That way, as soon as assets are delivered, all I need to do is plug them into the funnel, test everything, and then launch. This is the typical process that we take in terms of launching things. It's pretty straightforward. What I will be doing is at the end of the third episode of this, after we release optimizing, I'm going to be adding a link to the bottom of this video. So subscribe, stay tuned for the rest of this stuff. And this document will probably end up being like 15, 20 pages of just how to launch, initially test, and then optimize campaigns. So like I said, stay tuned for that. I'm going to be running through everything you need to know in that phase of things. But the biggest takeaway, and to kind of sum this up, is make sure you meet the base needs. If you have the desired stuff, that's awesome. For you agency owners, this is a great way to filter if you're going to run ads. Don't run ads if they're broke. I repeat, do not fucking run ads if they're broke. Don't. I've done it too many times. It's not worth it. If they're not willing to spend $500,000 a day, you're wasting your fucking time. So please do that on the front end. Next, really nail this initial copy doc. Super, super important. Like I said, if you want to learn more about what this would look like, just book a call. Once you've nailed the copy doc, then determine the funnel you're going to use. Model it out like I mentioned. Shout out Josh Troy and Jeremy Haynes again. Great content on financially modeling. Pick your funnel. Once you've determined your funnel, then go into your ad strategy based on your audience. This part's fucking huge. Please do a good job with picking this. and not just running direct response and expecting a 3x ROAS, because it's not going to happen. The space is competitive. If you suck dick at running ads, you're just going to burn your money. Please follow this. And then last, when you go to launch, create your assets and do it in this order, because it's, in my opinion, the most efficient way to go about this process. So that breaks down launching to paid. If you guys have any questions, comments, drop them down below. Would love to hear your thoughts. Would love to hear your feedback. Stay tuned for episode 2, where I'm going to be going into the initial testing. We're going to be covering things like message testing, targeting testing, conversion point optimization testing. So am I doing a purchase event on a call funnel? Am I doing a scheduled call, submit an application? What am I using on that side of things? How am I testing? How am I allocating capital in the initial testing phase? And then once I'm profitable, we'll then go into the third video, which is going to be optimizing your campaigns. So hope that helps, guys. Hope you learned something. Like I said, comment, subscribe, stay tuned for the next couple ones. By the end of the month, you'll see this doc with whatever inside of it. And then happy running ads. I'll see you in the next one.